Hello, it's Dr. Mears, and today we are going to be learning about sampling techniques. Sampling techniques are when you want to obtain a sample from a population. Let's review some vocabulary first. Population, the whole group from which you may collect data. Sample, a small group chosen from the population. This may be, but not limited to, people, animals, and items. Sample size, this is the total number in our sample. It's going to be represented by the letter N. And sampling bias, a sample that is collected in such a way that all members of the population do not have the same chance of being selected. If a sample is biased, then the data collected and the measures that have been calculated will not represent the whole population. So sampling bias is not really a good thing. Okay, so how do we combat sampling bias? How do we not have bias? Well, here are some techniques for obtaining a sample from a population. The first technique is going to be called simple random sampling, or SRS. Select a sample completely at random. For example, using a random number generator or picking numbers from a hat. So if you remember an example of ever writing your name down on a piece of paper and then a teacher coming around with a little bucket or a little hat and you would throw your piece of paper in there and then she would pick 3 people or 4 people from your class. She used simple random sampling, or he used simple random sampling, or they used simple random sampling. So the technique reduces bias, which is a good thing. It reduces bias the most because everyone from the population has the same chance of being selected. So how do we do this? Steps to conduct a simple random sample. Now, you could use the hat method where you get everybody's name and you put a piece of paper and you fold them and put them in a hat and pull out how many you need. But you don't really have to do that all the time, and it's kind of time consuming. So what are we going to do? First, we're going to generate a list of your population. We're going to write down the names of our people, or you could copy and paste if you have a list of people that you're already using. For this example, I wrote down 16 names of students that I have, no particular student. I just went with my first core and I went from there. So I wrote down 16 names. So here's the name, and I'm going to be giving each one a number. So here, my population is 16 people. That's my whole population. So I generated a list of my population. Now I'm going to give each one a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you can see, there's 16 people here. And I did 16 because that's what fit in the camera, so I stopped there. So my population is 16. So what I want to do, I just wrote down population 16. So what I want to do is I don't want to use all 16 people. I want to only obtain a sample size of, let's say, 4. So I want my sample size, which I said we can use as the letter N, to be 4. So out of these 16 people, I just want to choose 4. All right, let's see what's next. So I gave each one a number. Now we're going to take out our graphing calculator and use the random number generator to select the desired sample size. Okay, so I included steps for this right here. Here are our steps. Here's my graphing calculator, so let me turn it on. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to press math. Math is right underneath this green alpha button here. It's right here. So that's the button we're going to push, math. And you're going to see a whole menu come up. We're going to push the right arrow over to probability. Here's probability. So right arrow over, perfect. All right, we're going to try to find 5, which is called randint. This means random integers. This is going to help us choose our 4 people. So we're going to go down to 5. You can either press 5 or go down to 5 and press enter. All right, if you have a menu on your calculator, which we do, this is the menu. The lower number is our start number. So I'm going to start with number 1. The upper is your end number. That's how many people are in my entire population. So I have 16 people total. My N is the sample size that I want. So I only want the calculator to give me 4 people. So this is what we started with. I started with the number 1. As you can see on my paper here, I started with the number 1. I went to the number 16, and I only want to choose 4 people. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and on paste, I'm going to press enter. Now, if you didn't have that menu, what would come up is just random integer with a parentheses. And so if you didn't have a menu, you would just put in 1, 16, 4. This does the same thing. It gives you your start number, your end number, and how many you want out. That's the 4. So we need to press enter one more time. And you see it gives us 4 numbers, 16, 15, 3, and 9. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our list, and we're going to highlight who we've chosen. So the calculator gave us number 16. So Justin has been selected. And then 15, Contrell has been selected. And then 3, Ariel has been selected. And then 9, Venice has been selected. So that's my sample using simple random sample. So now I have my 4 people. They've been selected. This was completely random. So each person in here had the same opportunity to be selected, which helps us to reduce bias. Okay, so that's called simple random sample. There is a hat method that you can use, or you could use our calculator one. All right, let's go on to the next one. The next one is called systematic sampling. A sample is collected by first dividing the population by the sample size desired and then using that number to count off the sample. For example, if we have 60 people in our population and we wanted a sample size of 10, we would divide it, 60 by 10, that equals 6. We get a list of the names and count every 6th person to be in our sample. This technique is also good at reducing bias, but not as well as simple random sampling. Not everybody has the equal chance of being selected because you're choosing each one, you're just doing the 6th, so that 6th person will always be the one that would be chosen. So let's try it with ours. I don't have 60, I only have 16. So let's use our steps with my population. I have the same exact population here. I have name, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to count off. So that's why I put sample. So number 1 says obtain the list of your population. Got that. Number 2, find the total number in your population. So remember I said there's 16. Okay. Decide what you want your sample size to be. Well, I wanted my sample size to be 4, so N was 4. Okay. Divide your population by your sample size. 16 divided by 4 equals 4. Okay, so divide your population. So I got 4. Use your list to count off the number you obtained in number 4. This is your sample. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, and every 4th person, that's who's going to be in my sample. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, this is good at reducing bias. However, not everybody had an equal chance of being selected, because it's like if you're the 4th person, then you're definitely going to be selected. So it's not as good as the technique that we just used, number 1, but it's pretty good. Okay, so we know that we have Tamaja's in our sample, Tanel's in our sample, Lucas is in our sample, and Justin is in our sample. So now we obtained a sample of 4 using systematic sampling. Okay, what other ones? We see there's another one here. So let's move that. Number 3, we have what's called convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is a sample collected by selecting people who are easy to reach. For example, people at school, at a store, online platform. I get a lot of people wanting to send out surveys or ask for opinions using Instagram or using Facebook or what other online platform. That's all well and good, but it does introduce bias, as it doesn't give everyone in the population an equal chance of being selected. So our number 1, simple random sampling, is really number 1 when it comes to selecting a sample. But how would you do convenience sampling? Because sometimes it's not avoidable. You can't avoid doing it. So how do you do it? Steps to conduct a convenient sampling. 1, you choose a convenient place to obtain your sample. So a lot of people say, I want to do a taste test. And so where would you do a taste test? In school. Well, right, you would do it in the calf. So that's your convenient location because, in the calf, people are going to want to eat something and they're going to definitely want to come over to try to do a taste test. They are really fun. I love taste tests. So then what do you do for number 2? You go to that place and you conduct your study. Again, it does introduce bias, but sometimes it's not, you can't avoid it. And so what you would do when you write in your paper, if you used a convenient sampling, you would write down that it did introduce bias, but that you had to do it because you had to obtain your sample. So that's all. Okay, what's next? We have quota sampling. Quota is a sample is selected by first setting certain quotas for your sample. For example, selecting 10 students from each grade level in high school. This may introduce bias if it doesn't give everyone in the population an equal chance of being selected. So you would, instead of just obtaining a list, you would obtain certain number of students from, say, junior and senior. So you can obtain a junior list and you can obtain a senior list. And then you would select maybe 2 students from junior and 2 students from senior. So my sample size is 4. Let me move this down. Sorry. So junior, you get the list and you get 2 students. Senior, you get 2 students. And so you would be equal to 4. So you select what you want your quota to be, and then you select your method of selecting those people in each quota separately. So you might have to do a simple random sample to obtain these 2 people for your juniors. And this was method number 1. And then you might do another simple random sample. Remember, this was number 1 to obtain 2 more people. So it might introduce bias. If you're using simple random sample, it won't. Because if you wanted to split out your quota, you can. So that's quota sampling. But it does involve either simple random sampling or another different technique. Okay, and then stratified sampling, a sample that involves the division of a population into smaller subgroups known as strata. In stratified random sampling or stratification, the strata are formed based on members sharing attributes or characteristics such as income, educational level, or age. The numbers in each strata must be proportional to their numbers in the population. So if we have 100, you should probably choose 10 from each strata. This might reduce bias if it uses simple random sampling. What would we do? Well, first we separate our population into the chosen strata. So you're thinking about groups. And then you're counting the number of people in each strata, determining how many people from each strata need to be selected. How you do that is the number of people in one strata divided by the total number of people in the population. That's the number in the sample. And then you're going to use simple random sampling, which is the best, to select your sample from each strata. So it's a little bit more complicated in that you're separating people into groups first, and then you are selecting a random sample, making sure that you have proportional groups. And that's stratified sampling. You can definitely learn more about that online. I'm not going to go through a detailed example about that. I feel that would be a whole nother video for stratified random sample. And I hope this helped with the various techniques that we can use for sampling. Thank you.